Welcome to the Sunday Sit Down. We have a name, and we're introducing it on a week when Pastor Grant is away. So he is aware of it, though. So,
We didn't just come up with it on our own.
that's right. My name is Justin Sytsma. I'm one of the pastors at Courtright. And with me today, I have Abby Buckle. Say hi, Abby.
Hi, Abby.
Wait a minute. Abby is many things. She's a wonderful human being, but also currently our food cupboard coordinator over the summer months. Abby is a seminarian currently.
Whoa.
Is that okay? Is it okay to talk about that? Yeah.
Yeah.
What else? What else should people know about you, Abby?
I also am kind of a scientist-y person. I've got a little dual interest happening.
Yeah.
Yep. And
Love that.
yeah.
And so excited to have Abby helping us out this morning as we talk about this past week's sermon, which Pastor Grant preached. And I am just getting in. I just got in from Scotland. I was away for about a week and a half and enjoying some time with my family and some other friends of ours. And so I had to run out to the grocery store because we had no food in our cupboard this morning, and I had to get some lunch for my child who is getting off to a day camp today, and had a chance to listen to both of the past couple weeks sermons.
Did you listen to them on 2x speed?
I did not, I thought I was going to, but then I didn't. And part of it was,
Wow.
I know. Yeah. So,
That's a long grocery shop.
well, okay, no. I listened to one while I was getting ready
Okay.
because they were both 40 minutes, which Grant rarely does 40-minute sermons, but apparently does it while I'm away. So one was a grocery shop, one while I was
Okay.
getting ready. So,
Okay.
yeah. And so last Sunday, we were talking, the passage was the story of, if I could find it here, Jesus calming the winds and the waves, calming the storm. This is from Luke chapter 8, verses 22 through to 25. 25. Thank you. I was lost for a second there. And so do you have it pulled up there, Abby? Or
do.
Do you want to go ahead and read it for us?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Luke 8, 22 to 25. Uh-oh.
What's going on?
I clicked off of it. One day, Jesus said to his disciples, "Let us go over to the other side of the lake." So they got into a boat and set out. As they sailed, he fell asleep. A squall came down on the lake so that the boat was being swamped and they were in great danger. The disciples went and woke him up, saying, "Master, Master, we're going to drown." He got up and rebuked the wind and the raging waters. The storm subsided and all was calm. "Where is your faith?" he asked his disciples. In fear and amazement, they asked one another, "Who is this? He commands even the winds and the water, and they obey him."
There's like so much in this passage, and we want to try today to not just like duplicate things that Grant talked about, but to go in a different direction. And so we thought through a few different things. We thought through some areas to go a little deeper into, and there's lots of amazing themes here. There's sort of like this approach to Jesus that different parts of Christianity will take. And I think there's something to explore there. We're going to talk a little bit about this idea of the opposite of faith not being doubt, but fear. And then like kind of how are you redirecting that? How are you redirecting? And even as Jesus asked this question, where is your faith? Noticing how he asks that question and what is his approach toward his disciples. Is he chastising them? How do we internalize that question, right? And then also just real practically, when we are in a situation like this, hopefully not a literal storm, but this is why it becomes this metaphor that gets used often even in our worship songs and in hymns, in our language. We talk often about the storms of life. How do we approach Jesus, and how do we approach ourselves in those moments, and what are some things we can do? I mean, there are friends in our church community who are experiencing some very real life storms right now. And So this is not theoretical. This is real life, right? And so, just being able to go into this a little bit and explore, just who Jesus is in this passage. So, why don't we start there? And I'll just kind of set the table and then open it up for discussion. So, we talked. Grant talked a little bit in the sermon about this being a very different Jesus than we sometimes paint. That Jesus, I mean, number one, he's having a nap. And then when they wake him up to deal with the storm, he gets up and he deals with it. He literally rebukes, and we use that language. That's the same language of exorcism, of the way that he would rebuke a demon inside someone. He is rebuking the winds and the waves, and they subside.
Yeah.
Like, that's some scary stuff. Like, if you were in the presence of someone who did that, what other option would you have other than to be slightly afraid of that kind of power, right?
Yeah.
And so there's a tension there. There's a tension there that I want to jump into a little bit of, you have Jesus who, the same Jesus who in other parts of the Gospels, talks about, one of Jesus's most famous quotes is, "Come to me, all you who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. My yoke is easy, my burden is light." And so we have this Jesus who provides and brings comfort, and this Jesus who joins us in our suffering, and this Jesus who goes before us. And then we also have Jesus who is doing some downright, like, terrifying things like this, right?
Yeah.
And so, like, I want to just talk about that a little bit and how we approach Jesus in a healthy way that avoids, like, bifurcation of, like, he's this way, he's that way. No, he's like, so I don't know. Are you any thoughts around that?
Yeah. I think something I noticed, like, reading through this morning, was the order that Jesus did things in. Where it's like the disciples wake him up and they're freaking out because there's a massive storm. And they were in great danger. Like, it literally, like, it wasn't like they were overreacting to some little storm on the lake. Like, they were in danger. So they wake him up. And before he asks them the question, "Where is your faith?" Like, before he addresses them at all, he gets up and calms the storm. And I think sometimes we get that backwards. Like, when people are in the middle of a storm, we throw at them, "Well, where is your faith? Like, have more faith." And I think Jesus is really representing, like, acknowledging that when we're in the middle of it, we don't have capacity to be reevaluating the order of our faith and where we have put our faith, like, appropriately or not. And there is a lot of compassion in that. That Jesus is saying, like, okay, things need to be calm so that you have space to think about this question I'm going to ask you. That's really important, because I think the other thing about rebuking being this, like, putting evil in its rightful place is that that's, like, scary when you're, watching Jesus just bring a storm to total stillness, but also recognizing that, like, there are things in us that Jesus can address and hopefully is addressing. But Jesus isn't weaponizing that. No. He's not saying, "Well, you guys didn't put your faith in me. I was over here napping, so thanks for waking me up." Like, he, doesn't extend that rebuke to them. He rebukes the storm to, like, show them that he's worth trusting.
I love that. And it's almost like, hey guys, let's regroup here. Let's have a chat. Let's talk about what happened here. Like, what happened to faith in that moment? Like, it's this, and it kind of encompasses this idea of Jesus as one who is worthy of us being, in awe and wonder and fear over. And also he is our teacher and our shepherd, and the one who we seek wisdom and even comfort from in those moments where after the fact, he's like, "Hey, that that was wild, guys. Like, what happened there? You know, and not in a, you know, I think Grant said this, like not in a chastising way, but in a way that's like, let's talk about this. Let's like share our, you know, what we encountered in that moment. Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't think Jesus was saying like, you shouldn't have woken me up from my nap. Like if you had just let me sleep, it all would have been fine. But I think he probably is more addressing that the disciples automatically jumped to the conclusion that they were going to drown instead of, you know, realizing the person they have in front of him, in front of them had the power to do something about it and asking him to come into that. Yeah. And I'm like, I'm the first one to admit I jumped to conclusions. I'm like leaping to every conclusion accessible before Jesus. And so I think, yeah, there's a regrouping of like, let's reflect back on how we did this and see what we missed or what we could do next time.
Yeah. We had a moment. This is very fresh because it was 2 days ago. And so, like I said, I was in the UK and I was driving,
on the wrong side of the road. On the other side of the road.
And, I was 5 days into this and I was like, I picked it up pretty quick. Right. But, when I don't have my Apple Maps showing me where to go, because I've lost signal and it's pouring rain and the roads are very narrow. Oh. and we realize we are driving up a mountain that's leading to a dead end. This is what was happening 2 days ago. There was some panic in the car. There was a little bit of panic in the car in the moment. And we had to debrief it afterward, right?
Yeah.
But not in the moment. And I think that's to your point and to the point of what Jesus does here. It's not in the moment. Like I'm not gonna, my wife is not gonna say to me and I'm not gonna say to her, where's your faith? Like, come on, we're gonna be fine. I'm more the type who's like, it'll be fine. Like we'll figure it out, like that tends to be my approach, but like inwardly I'm freaking out a little bit, right? Like it is pouring rain. We have no cell signal. we have no, like the GPS is not telling us the right way. Like it was a mess. But then 5 minutes later, we're back on the path.
Yeah.
And we're able to talk about it. Be like, hey, you okay?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and fear keeps us safe.
Yeah.
Like if you hadn't been afraid, that's like a really good way to like hydroplane and like,
there was a lot of hydroplaning happening.
Oh dear. But like, if you're freaking out, you're not gonna, remember the like, turn the steering wheel where you want to go. Don't overcorrect.
Yeah.
Like, if the disciples didn't didn't do anything, like Jesus isn't asking for passivity.
Yeah.
Because then they would have drowned.
Yeah.
And there is like we're supposed to freak out if there is a bear. I'm going to the Yukon next week and my roommate just came back and they encountered a grizzly. And her response was stop, scream, run the other way, and face plant.
Wait, isn't that the opposite of what you're supposed to do?
Yes. What you're supposed to do is freeze, take out your bear spray, stay very quiet, and hope the grizzly bear goes the other way. And thankfully, when she screamed, it was startled and ran the other way. But we are supposed to respond to threats.
Yeah.
Because otherwise that's just foolishness.
Yeah. And yet also it is like when we are in those moments, sometimes our reactions are just like our brain doing what it does because it wants to protect itself. And and that's where I am firmly in the camp of Jesus, is not chastising them.
No.
Because they were having a very natural response. Right. Now, I guess one part of it that they maybe should have considered, hopefully in the moment, would have been that like, hey, I know that Jesus is sleeping, but like we've seen what this guy can do. We've seen some stuff so far in Jesus's ministry. Like maybe, he is, and maybe that's why they woke him. Maybe in the moment, like, maybe Jesus can do something about this, right? We don't have that in the text here, obviously, but
No.
you kind of wonder what's happening in their brain.
Yeah. Well, and there's like an accusatory tone in the way that they like, Master, we're going to drown. It's the like, hey, buddy who could do something about it and is taking a nap.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wake up.
A little judgy.
And yeah, I mean, like, I'm grateful for God's grace when I come at him, accusing him of all the things I think he should have intervened in earlier. But yeah, I think there is a like not chastising, but just like a gentle reminder of like, Jesus has a grip on what's going on.
Yeah.
He knows what's happening. And yeah, he knows when to like appropriately use his power. And so,
so let's talk a little bit more. Let's lean into this theme of faith. So Jesus asked, where is their faith? And Grant touched on the idea that the opposite of faith is not doubt. And that, so when we're talking about faith and we're talking about fear, how do we think about that? How do we think about there are ways in which you could weaponize that in an unhealthy way that I think I've seen done in recent history where Christians, have weaponized faith over fear. And yet I actually don't know that faith and fear are like necessarily opposites.
no.
I think that it is faith amid fear, that they are experiencing a very real thing that is happening to them, as we all have happened at various points in our life. And they are afraid, and maybe their faith is sinking or subsiding in that moment. But it's this interesting balance, and I don't quite know. It's a lifelong tension and challenge. But I don't know. Do you have any thoughts around that?
Yeah, I think for doubt, like, you can't, like, for faith and doubt to be like opposing things, like, is complicated because you can't just decide to stop doubting. You can't white knuckle your faith. You can't just like pretend that if you grit your teeth hard enough, all of a sudden you'll get this faith. Like, but with, like, I think you're right that there's like this faith and fear that kind of come together, because you can be afraid or like fear in fear and amazement. The disciples like looked around of this, like, it's this awe of like the power and like a respect of the authority that Jesus has that exists within their faith. But it's like kind of the fear that dictates how they choose to respond in faith. Like, I think if they weren't afraid, or if they were doubting, they might have been really wishy-washy on, do I wake Jesus up? Do I like, is it worth it? Is he going to do anything?
Maybe he can't do anything.
Maybe he can't do anything.
Yeah.
And I mean, I would hope after the amount of miracles the disciples had seen, they were kind of past that. I mean, they're not, but that's for later.
Yeah, that's right.
But in their fear, they like rightly engage Jesus in it. Whether they do that appropriately is, they're still kind of grasping for control over a situation. But it's like how we choose to engage that fear dictates how our faith is going to be lived out and like actionable. And that's hard because we don't get a choice not to react the way you would if there's doubt. You have to engage somehow. And that's almost harder. Yeah. Yeah. The stakes are high.
When I think about fear, and I've always wrestled with this idea of when people talked when people talked growing up about the fearing God and things like that, and in this case fearing Jesus, who's the Son of God. I bristled at it because I was like, no, fear is bad.
Mm-hmm.
I bristled at it. I was like, I'm not, like it's awe and wonder. It's reverence. It's utmost respect and reverence, all these things, but it's not fear.
Yeah.
And I'm learning to temper that a little bit as I hopefully mature, sort of, kind of, and think through what does it look like for me to look at Jesus, who is my Savior, who my salvation depends on, who is capable of this and so much more. How do I approach Jesus in a healthy way, right? Because obviously there is reverence, there is faith, there is, like I used to have a hat, because this was like a saying that was really cheesy back in the day. I used to have a trucker hat that said, "Jesus is my homeboy."
Yeah.
And it was stupid.
I'm kind of surprised by that.
And like looking back, I'm like, you know what? I don't think that showcases a reverence for who Jesus is. But I was 17 and silly. And so look at me repenting of 20-year-old plus sins, that I do think there is a place where I'm like, man, I need to see Jesus in his rightful place here.
Mm-hmm.
There is something so important about that. And yet I don't want to be overwhelmed by that fear.
Yeah.
Like that I think that there is a healthy fear and there is an unhealthy fear. I don't know, have you thought that through at all?
Yes. I am just thinking about in Isaiah 6, when Isaiah has this vision of, or like sees the Lord in like the throne room, and he's just like, he is in fear. Like this is a fear response. He's like looking at, like it's talking about, the seraphim and all of their wings and biblically accurate angels. And then Isaiah's response is, "Woe to me, I am ruined, for I am a man of unclean lips, and I live among a people of unclean lips, and my eyes have seen the King, the Lord Almighty." So he's having this realization that God is powerful and holy and perfect, and he is absolutely not. And it's really confronting. And he has this moment where one of the seraphim takes a piece of coal and touches it to his lips, and it like says, "Your guilt is taken away and your sin is atoned for." So he has this like encounter of all of that sin that he's like, I can't be in front of God, being taken away, and him being allowed to be in that presence. And his response to that fear is, "Okay, God, I am here. Like, do with me what you would want." He actually even more so says, "Here I am, send me." Yeah. Like, I'm going to go. And I think that surrender in our fear, not in a passive way, but in a very active, like, I have no idea what to respond, like what to do. I feel like I should run the other way, which is a normal fear response, and instead choosing to like have open hands and say, "Okay, God, like move me where you want me to go," or I'm going to follow your lead and see how you want to respond to this, instead of going out and trying to put out the fires by myself.
I love that. And it goes back to some of the language that Grant was using yesterday of like putting these things in their rightful places, right? That like there is, putting Jesus in his rightful place as king over the universe and even the winds and waves in the lake, and there is something to take very seriously there, and yet, and again, this is me sort of not wanting to temper that, because
Yeah.
I think that it is both. It's a both and. It is not an either or. But that also, this is the same Jesus who reaches, extends out to us in love and does offer us peace and comfort, and as we encounter challenging situations. And yet I also think it's because of the fact that he is powerful to save that he can do that. Because if he is only offering just like platitudes, mild platitudes of, oh, like I will be with you, I will go before you, I will do this, I will do that, and then but not able to back it up with this kind of stuff, that's just empty words.
Yeah.
Right. And so that is, so let me, maybe the way for me to say it is, Jesus can only be our comfort because he is worthy of our fear in this sort of situation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he's a like very safe place for that fear.
Yeah.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's not as though he, kicks the disciples. This isn't the moment where Jesus asks Peter to step out onto the water.
Mm-hmm.
And I think sometimes that's what we ask of people when they're afraid and when they're struggling with how to respond in their fear to God, is to be like, well, this is your get out of the boat moment. And I think that very much neglects the like safety and comfort of Jesus, that he was like in the midst of the storm, like he kept the disciples safe and out of harm. And like that matters. Like, yeah.
It's good. So let's talk a little bit about, let's kind of bring it home a little. There are, as I said earlier, just a ton of situations in our own church community. I'm not going to name them, but we could, start talking for hours about the challenges that folks in our church are facing, real life and death, life altering, illnesses and situations. And it could be so damaging to ask them, where's your faith? Right. And yet how do we approach, in our own lives? And I can think about, some circumstances from my own life. How do we approach, Jesus when we are drowning in the storms of life, to use an overused metaphor? I know for me, I do want a Jesus in those moments who is that dual sort of like powerful, can do stuff, get stuff done, and yet also will be my comforter and my shelter and my supporter, all of those things. And I do believe Jesus is all those things. And yet I also think that there are things we can build into our life, that yes, we put our faith and our trust in Jesus. And also there are other things that we can do. Fear, as we've talked about, fear is a natural response. Fear is like, it's a biological response. We're scared. People are scared of heights because heights can kill you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some people aren't scared enough of heights.
I am one of them. As we were overlooking a very steep cliff last week, I remembered when I was 10 years old and we were along the somewhere in the east coast of Canada. I think it was Grand Manan Island in the middle of the Bay of Fundy, and they have these like 200 plus foot cliffs overlooking the water, and I approached them just a little too quickly, and the screams from my mother, "Justin, get away from the edge!" I was like, I probably could have been a little bit more afraid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or like the guy that jumped from the edge of space. Do you remember that?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, he
Wasn't
passed away.
Doing that?
Not from
No.
the edge of space, but
Oh.
paragliding, which another. Please be more afraid of heights.
Yeah. Yeah. So there is a biological response. We can't control that.
No.
Like that is just, it's baked into our literal bodies and minds.
Yeah.
Now there's obviously some fears that are a bit more pathological that maybe need a little bit of, maybe a bit more irrational and might need a little bit of help from some professional counselors and psychotherapists, etc. But in general, fear is a normal, natural response to life's circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
And so we can put our faith and trust in Jesus. We can look to Jesus as powerful and able to overcome our circumstance. But also, what other practices are good for us in those moments? So there's prayer, obviously, taking time to just be still before God. There's lots of these spiritual practices. What are some practices that you've done to help you?
I think my impulse when I am afraid or deciding, like, do I want a God who's powerful right now or do I need the God who is comforting, is then just paralysis, and I want neither.
Oh.
And so then my impulse would be to just not engage because I'm like, well, I don't know. Do I need God to intervene or do I need God to just make space for me?
Mm-hmm.
And what I've found to be really helpful is, like moving my body, like,
Mm-hmm.
because like whether or not, we're getting chased or there's heights or like there's something we should rightly be afraid of, when we feel fear, our body will still respond.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to, for me, like engage my body in whatever practice
Go for a walk.
I'm doing. So like go for a walk.
Mm-hmm.
Or like, I don't like lift weights, but like building things, like putting together IKEA furniture is actually like, I find to be very therapeutic.
You've heard it here, folks. So if you have IKEA furniture you want built.
Oh, I didn't say I did it calmly, but but it is like an outlet of like, okay, I have, I'm figuring something out. I'm following instructions. And then pairing my prayer like with another activity, so that there's like engagement with, so that my body recognizes, okay, like we're safe.
Yeah.
And then I can rightly assess that scenario or attempt to. Do not do it well all the time. And that's, so helpful for me. And then I think like the other thing that I come back to a lot is Psalm 77, which talks about like remembering the songs I used to sing in the night. And this idea of like looking back and remembering the ways that God has already showed up.
Yeah.
And that I am not special enough to be the first exception to God's faithfulness. And I might not like how God shows up, or I might prefer that he show up in a different way, or that he just deal with it and I don't have to do anything. Just, calm the storm by yourself, please.
Yep.
I'll let you do that, God. That's often not how he chooses to do it. But to take time and look back and reorient myself from there instead of from where I am now.
That's good. I know for me, fear and anxiety are not synonymous, I don't think, but I think often they accompany one another, right? Often anxiety can crop up out of nowhere, but often when you are fearful, your mind can start, racing, your heart can start palpitating at a faster rate. And sometimes when you're anxious, sometimes when you are fearful, the hardest thing to do can be to find a way to calm your mind. And I had a wonderful Christian, she was a psychiatrist, and she, she gave me just like a list of exercises. She's like, you know what? God has made our brains amazing. They are capable of lots of terrifying things, but also their capacity for growth and the way in which you can like actually like overcome some of these things, just by like being still and breathing deeply. And part of that, I think, is sometimes even like being sometimes a little uncomfortable. It's a little uncomfortable to be still. It's a little uncomfortable to breathe really deeply and breathe in and breathe out. And I often am pairing that, and this was encouraged, pairing that with, like little mini prayers as I'm breathing in and breathing out. Right. And there's a practice called, centering prayer, which is really like slow, really intentional, repetitious prayer, and it has, I think, the byproduct of calming your brain and calming your mind, and allowing you to see things clearly. Because when our minds are racing, when our fear is taking over, we can't see things clearly. And that doesn't mean like if you're in the middle of like, and I'm just some of the situations in our own church community that are coming to mind for me that are so challenging. It doesn't mean it's going to go away. No. It doesn't mean that you're all of a sudden going to feel all better. But in these moments of like heightened fear and anxiety, we can still ourselves before God, and at least try to think as clearly as we can, because sometimes we end up in those moments fixating on things that we can't control, fixating on things that are just going to cause us to spiral, versus being able to say clearly and calmly, this is out of my control. And it really sucks, because I want God to intervene and step in, and I'm going to pray into that God would heal this family member, or do this, or do that, or fix this broken part in me. So you can do that while also looking at, okay, if I'm calm, if I have this moment to still my brain, I can then look and say, okay, these are the things that I can control. These are the things that maybe Jesus is calling me to step into and to do, and to say like, this is like, I can't touch that. That's up to God. This is my part. Yeah.
But we really can't, like, that's not accessible if we're
for freaking
all over
out.
The place.
Yeah.
Well, and I'm like, so often I feel like I'm just like a toddler before the Lord, where I'm like flipping out, like, slamming doors, stomping my feet. And it's been just, God is so kind and just like, letting me have my moment, and then looking with compassion and being like, that was what it was. Maybe let's work on not doing that again and figuring that out. But like, it's only once I am done having that moment that I can like engage with God and engage with my surroundings and decide, like, God either has this or he doesn't. And in faith, I'm going to choose to believe that he does, and let that just be what it is.
That's good.
Yeah.
I like the idea that we are like toddlers before the Lord, like, cause it's kind of true. And I love, in a moment of real, this is like maybe 10 plus years ago, where I was experiencing some very real anxiety. Just, I don't even know where it all came from, but I was feeling pretty, just my general state of anxiety was pretty bad. I had to stop drinking coffee for like a month.
Wow.
It was trying times. But someone drew my attention to Psalm 131, which has always been like a moment where I can sort of like breathe in, breathe out, and just hear the words, where it says, "My heart is not proud, Lord. My eyes are not haughty. I do not concern myself with great matters or things too wonderful for me, but I have calmed and quieted myself. I am like a weaned child with its mother. Like a weaned child, I am content." And it's like, man, like that, I would just read that
Mm-hmm.
and I would just sort of like be still and calm my heart.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like this beautiful moment of like, I know this is a weaned child here, but like think about like a child after like a temper tantrum.
Yeah.
Like and they're just like they're out of energy.
Mm-hmm.
They're at their wits end and they're just like, "Dad, can I just have a snuggle?"
Mm-hmm.
And it's a beautiful image.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really beautiful image. And so maybe that's unless you had any further thoughts, maybe that's
No.
maybe a good spot to end as we think about the ways in which we approach Jesus in places of fear. And again, like I said, I recognize there are some, situations spoken and unspoken that are happening in our world, in your world. And just to think through, how do we see Jesus in this? How do we know that he is with us? What is our approach to him? And so I hope you'll consider some of these things as you go into your week. Maybe take some time to kind of chew on, your fear response. Where does your relationship with Jesus land in those moments? Do you retreat? Do you lean in? Do you kind of beg Jesus to do something, to step in? Or are you someone who is tending to become overcome with fear and anxiety in those moments to the point where you can't even think straight? Just think through some of these things. What's our approach? What are some things that we can place in our lives that will help us to experience the fullness of who Jesus is? That Jesus is both this powerful, this powerful God who can respond to the winds and waves, and is also our comfort in challenging times. And so we hope you'll take this into your week. Have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you next time.